Your mind isn't busy because you're doing too much. It's busy because too many things are still open. What if your mind feels busy not because you're doing too much, but because nothing ever feels finished? Not finished in a dramatic sense, just not closed. You might notice it in quiet moments, when you sit down, when you stop scrolling, when nothing is asking for your attention. And yet your mind feels full, not loud, not anxious, just occupied, as if it's holding something. That feeling doesn't come from thinking too hard. It comes from keeping track. Modern life doesn't ask us to complete things. It asks us to remember them. Messages you haven't replied to yet. Ideas you meant to return to. Tasks you paused halfway through. Decisions you postponed without resolving. None of these are urgent, but all of them stay open. And the mind doesn't like open things. It keeps a quiet list. Not consciously, but persistently. This is what mental bookkeeping looks like. You're not actively thinking about everything. You're just making sure nothing gets lost. The mind becomes a storage system, tracking what still needs attention, what still needs a response, what still hasn't been decided. Even when you're resting, that system stays on, because unfinished things don't announce themselves. They just linger. Mental bookkeeping doesn't feel like stress. It feels like something quietly running in the background all the time. What makes mental bookkeeping especially draining is that it has no clear boundary. There is no moment where the mind is told, you can stop holding this now. Unfinished things don't expire. They don't fade on their own. They stay available, even when they're no longer relevant. A conversation you should reply to, a task you decided not to do, an idea that no longer matters. The mind keeps them anyway, not because they're important, but because they were never closed. And closing is not something modern life encourages. We move on quickly, we switch contexts, we leave things half resolved and assume they'll disappear. But the mind doesn't work like that. It doesn't distinguish between unfinished and unimportant. It only registers whether something is complete. If it isn't, it stays active. This is why mental fatigue today feels different from physical tiredness. When physical effort ends, the body receives a clear signal. The work is done. But mental bookkeeping has no such signal. There is no finish line. So the mind remains slightly alert, not focused, not anxious, just ready. That readiness becomes the baseline. And when readiness never turns off, rest begins to feel shallow. You're not recovering. You're just pausing. The system stays online. That's why the mind feels busy even when the day was quiet, like a browser with too many tabs open. Nothing is crashing, but everything is slower, heavier, because the workload isn't happening in actions. It's happening in holding. Every unfinished item takes a small amount of attention, not enough to notice on its own, but together they add up. And because none of them are demanding resolution right now, they never leave. They wait. The mind keeps them available just in case you need to remember, just in case you should act later. That constant readiness is tiring, not dramatically, gradually. This is also why clarity feels rare. Clarity requires closed loops, a sense that something is done, but mental bookkeeping keeps everything slightly open. Nothing fully resolves, nothing fully rests. So the mind never receives the signal that it can stop monitoring. You might think the solution is to organize better, to be more productive, to clear your to-do list. But productivity often adds more items than it removes. More notes, more reminders, more systems to manage, which means more things to track. Mental bookkeeping doesn't disappear when you do more. It often grows because the issue isn't efficiency, it's accumulation. Modern environments encourage accumulation. Information without endpoints, conversations without conclusions, work without clear stopping points. Everything continues, so the mind continues too. This is why doing nothing can feel uncomfortable. When external activity stops, the internal list becomes more noticeable, not louder, clearer. And that clarity feels like pressure, not because something is wrong, but because the mind has been carrying things quietly for too long. Mental bookkeeping is invisible work. No one sees it. You don't even see it clearly yourself. You just feel its weight. A vague sense of, I should remember something. A low-level tension without a source. A feeling that you're forgetting something important, even when you're not. That's the cost of never finishing, not failing, not falling behind, just never reaching an end. So what if your mind stays busy because nothing ever feels finished? Not because you can't focus, not because you think too much, but because too many things are still being held, waiting, tracked, remembered. What if mental rest doesn't come from silence, but from fewer things asking to be kept in mind? And what if the tiredness you feel isn't about effort at all, but about a system that never gets a shut down?